You ever notice how life feels like it's moving, but somehow you're not? Like you're doing everything, right on paper, working, planning, trying to stay positive, but deep down, there's this quiet pressure sitting in your chest, like something is missing, like you're waiting for your real life to finally begin. Maybe you've been telling yourself, it will happen soon, or I just need more time. Or even maybe, I'm not lucky like those people who always seem to get it right. And I want you to pause right there, because that thought, that feeling, it's more powerful than you think. Because your life is not responding to how hard you're trying, it's responding to what you're consistently believing in silence. Most people in the US today are not stuck because they lack opportunity. They're stuck because their inner dialogue is quietly rehearsing limitation every single day. The bills, the pressure, the comparison scrolling, the fear of choosing wrong, it all builds an invisible script in the background. And here's where things get interesting. There is something deeply intelligent about the way life responds to you. It doesn't argue. It doesn't force. It simply mirrors the energy you repeatedly hold, especially the energy you don't even realize you're holding. That's why two people can walk through the same economy, the same city, the same struggles, and one collapses under pressure while the other quietly expands into opportunity. It's not random, it's alignment. And I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but I want you to feel it differently today. Alignment is not about being perfect or positive all the time. It's about becoming aware of the frequency you're operating from when no one is watching. Because what you call stuck right now might actually be life slowing you down just enough so you can hear yourself again. So you can finally notice the beliefs you've been unconsciously rehearsing about money, love, timing, worth, and possibility. And yes, I know how frustrating that sounds when you're in it. When you're checking your bank account. When you're waiting for the opportunity call. When you're wondering if things will ever shift. But what if nothing is wrong with your timeline? What if what you're calling delay is actually intelligent timing rearranging everything behind the scenes in ways your current perspective cannot yet see? Because life doesn't only respond to effort, it responds to frequency. And the moment your inner frequency shifts, even slightly, you start noticing different doors, different people, different chances. Almost like reality itself starts reorganizing around you. So today isn't about forcing change, it's about understanding how change actually begins. Quietly, internally, invisibly, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. You know what's interesting about fear? It rarely shows up as something loud. It doesn't walk in and announce itself like a storm most of the time. It comes in quietly. It shows up as hesitation when you're about to apply for that job in New York or Texas. It shows up as overthinking when you're staring at your phone, thinking, should I post this idea or not? It shows up as delay, as distraction, as convincing yourself, I'll do it later when I feel more ready. But here's the truth most people never get told. Fear is not just an emotion, it becomes a default operating system when it's unexamined, and when fear becomes your default, you stop making decisions from vision and start making decisions from protection. You're not choosing what expands you. You're choosing what feels safest in the moment. And I want you to really feel this. Because in places like the US, where everything moves fast, where everyone seems to be building, earning, posting, scaling, it becomes very easy to confuse urgency with alignment. You start thinking, if I'm not moving fast, I'm falling behind. But what if that pressure itself is what's keeping you stuck in the same loop? Let me give you a real-life picture. There's a person in California, working a regular 9-5, scrolling at night through people building businesses online, watching others launch brands, travel, make money from their phone. Every night they say, next month I'll start, but next month looks exactly like this month, because the real barrier was never knowledge. It was fear dressed up as waiting. Fear of failing publicly, fear of wasting time, fear of not being good enough yet. And the mind is clever. It doesn't say, I'm scared. It says, I just need more preparation. It says, let me learn a little more first. It says, I'll start when I'm ready. But readiness is not a feeling, it's a decision that gets made in uncertainty. And here's where everything begins to shift. The moment you stop negotiating with fear, you start reclaiming your direction. Because fear only has authority as long as you keep listening to it like it's truth. And most people don't realize this. But fear loses power the second you observe it, instead of obey it. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to destroy it. You don't have to destroy it. You just stop letting it drive. And something very subtle starts happening when that shift begins. You start noticing moments where you could shrink. But you don't. You start speaking up when you would have stayed silent. You start applying when you would have waited. You start showing up even when you feel slightly unsure. And that's where life begins to reorganize around you. Because now you're no longer moving from contraction. You're moving from expansion. And expansion always changes outcomes. Now let's go deeper into something most people never connect. Your fear is not just emotional, it is informational. It's telling you what you've been unconsciously rehearsing about yourself. If you constantly feel fear around money, it's not just about money, it's about the story you've been repeating about your ability to receive it. If you feel fear around visibility, posting content, starting a business, being seen, it's not just social anxiety. It's identity resistance, and that's why it feels so heavy, because it's not just an action you're avoiding. It's an identity you're resisting stepping into. But here's the quiet truth. You don't need to become fearless to move forward. You just need to stop treating fear like it's the final authority. Because the people who actually shift their lives in places like Chicago, Miami, Houston, Seattle, they don't always feel ready. They just stop waiting for certainty that never comes. They move, and clarity follows movement, not the other way around. And once you see this pattern clearly, something inside you relaxes, because you realize you're not behind, you're just standing at the edge of a decision you've been postponing, and life has been waiting on you, not rushing you, not punishing you, just waiting for your signal. The moment you move differently, everything begins to respond differently, slowly at first. experience. Now imagine the opposite scenario. Same waiting period, same uncertainty. But instead of collapsing into doubt, she starts speaking differently. Not loudly, not perfectly, but consciously. I am in the process of expansion. I don't need instant results to trust my direction. What is meant for me is already aligning. Now the energy changes, not instantly in circumstances, but instantly in trajectory. And here's the part people miss. Divine timing is not random delay. It is coordination. It is the alignment of internal readiness with external opportunity. Because if something arrived before you could hold it, it would feel like pressure instead of blessing. Think about it like this. If someone in Miami suddenly got a massive business opportunity but internally still believed they were not ready, they would self-sabotage it without even noticing. Missed calls, delayed responses, overthinking decisions, fear of visibility. Not because they are incapable, but because their internal identity is not yet synced with the external level of life they're stepping into. So sometimes what looks like delay is actually protection, not punishment, preparation. And when you start seeing it this way, frustration slowly transforms into awareness. You stop asking, "Why is this not happening yet?" And you start asking, "What is still upgrading inside me while this unfolds?" And that question alone changes everything. Because now you are no longer resisting time. You are working with it. You begin to notice subtle growth. Your reactions soften. Your thinking becomes less frantic. Your decisions become more aligned, less impulsive. And without forcing anything, your external life starts reflecting that internal shift. New conversations show up. Unexpected opportunities appear. People you didn't expect start reaching out. Not because you chased harder, but because you stabilized internally. And that stability is what finally makes timing feel like support instead of resistance. Now, here's where everything starts to feel different. Not because the outside world instantly changes, but because you start changing the way you move through it. Because once your internal state stabilizes, something very interesting happens. You stop chasing life like it's running away from you. You start moving like life is already cooperating with you. We start moving like changes. And that shift, it's subtle at first. You still go to work in places like Houston or San Diego. You still deal with bills, responsibilities, messages you don't want to answer. But something inside you is no longer panicking in the same way. You're no longer emotionally collapsing every time something doesn't happen instantly. And that alone begins to change your signal. Because energy speaks before action does. And life is always reading the signal. Now let's go deeper into something most people completely underestimate. People don't attract opportunities randomly. They attract alignment pathways. Meaning the right people, timing, conversations, and doors don't show up because you forced them. They show up because your internal frequency became compatible with them. Let me give you a real lifestyle example. There's someone in Seattle working a regular job, feeling stuck. Feeling like nothing is moving forward. They keep thinking maybe, I'm just not the kind of person who gets lucky breaks. But something shifts slowly. They stop over-explaining their situation to everyone. They stop constantly seeking validation from friends who don't understand their vision. They start spending more time refining their skills instead of consuming endless content. And one day, almost unexpectedly, they post something online, not perfect, not viral, just real. And that post reaches someone who was already looking for that exact skill, that exact perspective. Now here's the important part. That opportunity didn't come because they suddenly became lucky. It came because they stopped broadcasting confusion and started broadcasting clarity. And clarity is magnetic. Because clarity tells life, I am ready to be seen differently. Now let's go even deeper. How people and opportunities find you is not random networking. It is energetic matching. If your internal world is chaotic, uncertain, and constantly doubting itself, you will keep attracting situations that reflect that instability. But when your internal world becomes even slightly grounded, more intentional, more steady, more aware, you start noticing a shift in the type of people entering your space. Conversations feel different. Emails feel different. Even random encounters start carrying meaning. And it doesn't happen dramatically. It happens quietly, like a recalibration. Now, here's something powerful you need to understand. Most people think abundance comes from effort. But abundance actually comes from coherence. When what you think, what you feel, and how you act start pointing in the same direction, life stops resisting you in the same way. You stop leaking energy through contradiction. And suddenly, things that once felt blocked start moving. Not because the world changed first, but because your internal alignment finally stopped interfering with your own progress. Now, let's talk about identity, because this is where transformation locks in. There is a version of you that already exists internally, calm, focused, financially stable, emotionally steady, not constantly doubting every move. And there is the version of you that is currently reacting to old conditioning. Most people try to force the new version while still emotionally living in the old one. That's where the tension comes from. But real change happens when you stop trying to become someone new through pressure, and instead start embodying small moments of that version right now. For example, a person in Miami who used to panic every time a bill arrived starts doing something different. Instead of spiraling, they pause, breathe, and say, "I will figure this out calmly." Nothing external changed in that moment. But internally, something reprogrammed. And that reprogramming, repeated over time, becomes identity shift. And identity shift always outruns circumstance. Always. Now let's bring it all together. When your internal dialogue becomes stable, when your emotional reactions become less reactive, when your attention stops scattering into fear loops, something very real starts happening in your external world. You stop missing opportunities you would have overlooked before. You stop delaying decisions that actually matter.